And it begins, the Nurila Glacial F3A aircraft, something very different here at the channel. We've had this sitting in the shop for quite a few months, and it's time to get this thing moving forward. It's going to be an interesting one, so stick around for this. It's going to be fun. We're going to use our gray matter, and it's going to be a cool project. So if you're not familiar with this manufacturer, they are made in Finland. Beautiful aircraft. These are very popular in the pattern world, and I am overly impressed with this aircraft. We did an unboxing quite a few months ago, and it's awesome. So we'll take a deeper dive in all the parts and the fuselage as we go through this, but if you guys take a look at this aircraft, it is very cool. The biggest thing about it that blows me away is the weight of it. It is unbelievable. We've got a live hinge, I think, or Kevlar hinge, but it's a center hinge. Huge tail here, very, very wide. Beautiful fuselage. Pre-done canopy as well. There's the label. Very nice. So it definitely blows me away at how light this thing is. I'm just going to tip it over so it's safe. We've got two wings, of course, for it, and these wings weigh, I don't know, they feel like they weigh nothing. Obviously they weigh something, but they do feel like they weigh absolutely nothing. Beautiful, beautiful wing setup. Getting into our other parts over here, we'll take a look at this stuff. We've got our horizontal stabs, and like, I don't know, like it feels like it weighs 30 grams. It's more than that, but not much. So we've got our horizontal stabs. We've got our 6 prop blades. With the prop, this is using one of these dudes. Forget what this is called. The Contra drive, I think. We've got our motor already on there. Our Contra drive's already set up. I was just playing around with this earlier and got one of our prop mounts installed. We've got our wing supports going in between the two wings, a bunch of hardware and pieces. We've got our legs, carbon legs, our wheel pants, but there's no wheels. I've just looked through this all. I laid out all the parts and pieces and I don't see any wheels. So I don't know if that's a thing. I don't really understand. So we're gonna have to figure that part out. And we've got a bunch of carbon pieces here, some former work for the fuselage, other little pieces, bits and bytes. This is more prop stuff, so lots of cool things. And like normal, this plane does not have a manual. I know there is a video on YouTube of Lassie, the owner of Nurila, putting one of these together, so that's probably what we're going to be referencing the most. Now we will be setting this plane up on Jetty, so we'll be setting it up on my Jetty DS24, which is the same radio the owner has. Now some of the things we don't have yet for this plane, the receiver, we've got those in stock, so we'll figure out our receiver setup that we're going to use. We don't have an ESC as well too. So that's something we have to figure out. I believe we're using MKS HV69s. I think that's the servo that Lassie uses in his videos, so I need to check that out. We do have some of those in stock, and yeah, that's the stuff. So yeah, this will be a little bit of a figure-outy type project, so we may get started on it and may have to wait for some parts to come in, which isn't our normal process, but unfortunately, that's the way we're going to have to handle this. So, as I showed you, we've got all the parts that came with the kit and that have been sent by the owner here, so we know what we got, and next thing I'm going to do is do some video research and figure out what our next steps are. All right, so we've got the fuselage on our stand. This stand is from RC Custom 3D Printing. Love this thing. I don't use it very often for jets, but for an aircraft like this, it is perfection. We've got the extension added on there, fully adjustable to hold it in place, so nice and solid, works great. So we're just going to be going through this aircraft process just like Lassie's video from Nurila. So the initial part of the project is just going to be all the gluing and everything. I did spend some time this morning getting some orders and things together for different parts that we need. So we'll talk more about that as we get through this project, but we're going to start to glue things and drill things and do all that stuff. So as a weird place to start, We're going to start off with our wing fastening location. So these two things are where you're putting your bolts through your wings to bolt them to the fuselage. So first thing we need to do is get blind nuts installed in these holes. Now 3mm blind nut, the holes are a little bit small right now, so we're going to enlarge those holes a little bit. The other thing is we don't want these grabbers to go into the carbon and into this piece of plywood, so we're going to flatten those guys down and get these ready to install. We're going to glue these in place, not get them pressed in with the little pokers. Okay, so first thing we want to do is drill out our holes here. Now these blind nuts are 4.25mm on our shaft. Check yours. They may vary in size. So in our case, we're using an 11/64 drill bit, and we've drilled these guys out to be the appropriate size. So now they'll just slip in there nicely. So we want to get rid of those teeth. We're just going to use our pliers and bend those teeth down. One thing to note is the parts and the fuselage looks like they were put together with peel ply. So when you glue this piece onto its appropriate location, you actually already have a very aggressive surface to grab to. So you don't need to do any sanding on these pieces because there's already lots of grip. All right, so now we're just going to take a pair of pliers and flatten these guys down to make them flush with the rest of the blind nut. All right, so just prepping the blind nuts to get glued in. So because we're not using the spikes, we added a little bit of texture to our blind nut. So on the threaded portion there and also the flat. So this gives our epoxy, our high-sol aero epoxy, something to grab to. So now we're going to put some aero epoxy on these guys and get them installed in the plates. All right, so we got some aero epoxy on there. We're using high-sol 9462. Not going crazy with excessive amounts and just getting that guy installed just like that. So these boards are symmetrical, so it doesn't matter which side you go on. Obviously, your blind nuts need to be on the same side. So we've got our blind nuts installed there. What I do is gave them a squish with the channel lock pliers, and that pushes them all the way in, flushes that guy down, and gets the blind nut nice and squished in place. So we'll just set those aside now. There's going to be a fair bit of that on this aircraft, just gluing and setting aside. So while we have some high-sol mixed up, now is a good time to come in and get these guys glued in place. So this is the front gear support, only goes together basically one way. So we're going to get these guys high-soled in place as well. All right, so got the front landing gear mount all glued together, so pretty straightforward. The joints there have been tooled with my finger, that's why you see the way they are. And when I put these together, I made sure I squished them with my fingers so they're nice and level, and then I tack glued them with some CA on that side because the glue was oozing out on the other side, and then just finger tooled the both sides. So again, we'll set that aside and let that do its thing. And the point of doing that now was just because we had some high-sol mixed, like I said. What we're going to do now is work on our plate here and take all of our pieces out. This is the template for the aircraft, so a lot of your servo openings, slots, this is like the horizontal stab holes, like this template is absolutely key. So we're going to get all of our pieces taken out of that guy. And in case you're wondering what glue I'm talking about when I say high-sol, so this is Loctite high-sol. 9462 is the most common material that we use. So this is long cure stuff, very, very strong. Takes about 2-3 hours to actually kick off and firm up, 24 hours for full cure, but that is our most used adhesive here in the shop. All right, so next thing to move on to, once we've got all of our pieces taken out there, is our wing pin joiner pieces. So these guys here, they've come pre-done already. I did a little bit of sanding with a file on the holes, cleaned up these guys, and we're just going to put some CA to hold those in place. Now the aluminum tubes that fit in these pieces, they go inside the wings, and these were pretty rough cut, so I took these on our disc sander and I flattened them out and then sanded the perimeters, so now they are nice and clean and square. So we're just going to install these guys like this, just using the tube as a holder piece, and get them installed in our carbon mounts. All right, so with our pieces glued in here, I did a little bit of sanding on the receiver portions, so you can see how much they were sticking out before, and it's only this one that you need to do it on. So sanded those down so they're matching roughly on both sides. So you have about 1 millimeter or so sticking through both sides. And next thing to do is get this piece, the cutouts done so we can get this piece installed. So what I did was get it sitting on the fuselage like this, nice and centered. And we put some black Sharpie marks on there. So we're going to do a slot. First of all, a slot to receive the carbon piece. And then we have to do an additional little section in the center to receive the plastic bushing. So it's going to be kind of a step slot in this area. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is use my Dremel with a disc to get the big slot cut out. I think it's going to be more accurate. And then we'll see what we're going to use to make our secondary slot for the little plastic bushings. All right, so we've got our slots cut here. You can see how they're shaped to allow this to fit in. Now you want the top surface of this piece to be about the halfway mark when you sand out the other areas for the pins to go in. So we're roughly in that area. What we can do too is the width here is 18 millimeters. So if we take 9, which is half, we should be able to go like this, and the top of the carbon piece should be about 9 millimeters to that surface, which we are right now. So those are good. We're going to do a little bit of sanding here to allow our pins to go through, and I'm just going to use the Dremel and then just our hand file, something like this, but obviously a round one, and get the pins fitting through. Now you want to do this side and this side to allow that pin to come all the way through the receiver portion here. All right, so we've got our wing receiver, our upper wing receiver fit, and everything looks good. Did some slow sanding here, mostly with just hand tools is going to be generally the best way to do that. Took a bunch of the material out with a Dremel and then used hand tools for everything else. So just have these tubes installed in the wings. They fit in there pretty snug, so there's no chance of them disappearing. But yeah, just have everything nice and pre-fit here just to check. So I kind of did a little adjustment side to side, and what I was doing there was measuring the distance from the side of our carbon to the edge of our fuselage on both sides, getting those even. The edge of our tube here to the edge of the fuselage, getting those even. And we had to take this and move it over that way about 0.5 millimeter, so not much, but enough that it does matter. What we're ultimately looking at here is the fitment between our wing and our fuselage. The back needs to be tensioned down. That will all change once the fitting on the back gets done, the bolts that actually hold the wing on, but you essentially want this to fit as snug as possible, and obviously you can only get it so snug because it pushes the wing down on the fuselage. But that one is pre-fit and good to go. And I'll just show you how easy this wing comes out. So basically just slides back and out. All right, next step is we're supposed to flip this fuselage over and do the same type of deal on the underside or for the lower wing. So we're going to get that flipped over, get our stand adjusted, and work on that lower portion. All right, so the kit comes with this vinyl sticker piece, and we've put that on. The good thing with this is it's repositionable, so I actually took about 10 tries to get this positioned. Got it on the first time, did a little bit of measuring here between like this area and the edge of the fuselage, and kind of put my marks on there to give a reference point, and then I was able to just shift it over. Now ultimately these holes aren't super important because our carbon support's going on the inside, and that's ultimately what's holding that in place, but obviously this gives you a good starting point. So now we take our Dremel, we're going to open this up, and then take our hand file and get it opened up to be the shape of the circle area. All right, so we've got our holes done up there, pulled our label off. Got our lower wing section and put our tubes in there, and we're just going to check and see if this fits. Nice, that fits good. Okay, so if I jam that all the way forward, so we're butted up to the edge here, I'm just going to feel my edges, so we're actually quite even there, which is great. And there's, I think, a little bit of side-to-side room, not much, but that does feel very close. Got a bit of a ridge right here and a bit of a ridge right there, so yeah, I like that. I think that's good. Yeah, that's great. So, and then this is the piece that mounts on the interior side that those pins go through. Just to give you an idea of what it looks like. So there's our pins coming through now on the fuselage side. All right, so now that we know our holes are good, I've taken a fine point Sharpie and drew around each of the holes. We want to make the hole bigger, and the reason for that is when we put our piece in here, our backer plate, we want those plastic bushings to come through the holes. So I've measured these out, they're 8 millimeters. So our current Sharpie mark there is about 8 millimeters, and we'll go a little bit wider than that just so there's a little bit of play room in here, but this should be a good starting point for slow and careful progress. All right, so we got our holes opened up, our pieces in there, and everything fits really nicely. Very happy with this. So according to the video, the next thing to do is we're just going to set this guy aside. And here's what it looks like, just to show you. So everything looks really good. That turned out wonderful. We've got a little bit of sanding to do on this side to make this fit better, but ultimately that fits really, really well. I think it's going to work out good. There's some epoxy in this area, so we're going to have to do a little bit of sanding on this piece, but that's fine. Happy with everything in the way it's fitting so far. So next thing in Lassie's videos is the tail section. Before we get to the tail section, I have been playing around with this drive system, contra drive system, and I am pretty stumped. I think we're missing some pieces. So if you look at the way this is set up, it's pretty straightforward. You've got two different drive shafts here, or gears that drive two different drive shafts. So the outside one, which spins one direction, the inside one, which spins another direction. So, you know, you've got the back blade holder here. This guy is going to go over top. Your nut goes over top of that. That's all pretty straightforward. But then we get to this piece here, and this is all of the hardware that we received, and this just, I mean, it doesn't do anything. There's no bolt, there's no nothing. And this ultimately needs to have some sort of fastener on the end because the cone came with an end bolt as well too. So pretty sure we're missing something. So I've reached out to the drive system guys and sent them an email wondering what we're missing or what I'm missing. I'm not sure. So next thing to do is take our big template piece here. I'm going to get our pieces installed where they need to go, and this gets lined up on the fuselage. Of course, I'll show you those details, and we drill out a few different holes here. So we do our horizontal stab hole, our incidence pin, and I think we do our things for the rudder and the pull cable to exit there as well. So a few different things to deal with here, but we'll get this set up and we'll take a look at it in more detail. All right, so working on the rear part of the fuselage here. So we've got our template done up. When you do this template up, you do have to clean up the holes a little bit. So when you take this piece and put it in there, you've got to sand just the little pieces of wood that interfere with those pieces interlocking. So there's a shot there for you of what's going on. So when we install this, it's going to butt up to the underside of the fuselage right there. Now the only key is this wood is going to have a little bit of bend to it. So when we do this, we want to be pushing this portion down and just getting this little angle there lined up with the edge. And that's just a repeatable location. So when we take this template, put it on the other side of the fuselage, we know that that edge needs to line up with the edge right there. So we're doing a few things here. So first big thing is our wing tube or stab tube hole right there. We've got our anti-rotation pin right there, or that's actually our incidence adjustment pin. We've got our exit for the rudder pull-pull system, which is right there. And we've got our control horn mounting, which is right there. We've also taped the rudder straight with a piece of automotive or paint prep masking tape. And this is the tools that we're using. So this is our standard, I think it's a 1/8 size carbide bit. And what we're going to be using is these little guys. And these are some of the tools I picked up from Jet Power. So this is the end mills, same as this, but just way more aggressive and obviously a lot smaller. So I'm not sure what size this is, but this is the smallest one that I have. And the nice thing, well, this is, what does it say? 2 millimeter. Actually, it's got it written. I don't know if that'll show up, but it's written right there on the shank. I think that says 2.00. The nice thing about this guy is you've got a smooth spot right at the base above my nail. So kind of like this. So when we install this in like this slot as an example, we're going down all the way and we're using the non-abrasive part to be our guide into that the profile. Now the only thing, of course, is we want to make sure that we're not going to go all the way through the surfaces, which we won't. It doesn't look like that's going to be an issue. So this guy here, we don't have a tool small enough to do that. So you can see here our tool is too wide. So I think in this case what I'm going to do is take my fine tip Sharpie, as long as it'll fit through there, and mark that guy out. Now if it doesn't work, then I can take a Dremel disc and just drop it in there and get that guy figured out as well. So we'll be creative with this. So we've got all of our holes done. Used our end mill drill bit or bit for this guy. This guy used a drill bit for this guy, and then this wire slot here, I just used an X-Acto blade. Actually, that worked out really well. Just use an X-Acto blade, cut one direction, cut the other direction, and I haven't pulled this off yet. I wanted to show you guys what it looks like. So yank it off, get rid of our dust there, and that's what it looks like. So very nice, really nice way of doing this stuff. I mean, this template thing, that's a first for me that I've seen this type of setup. Beautiful, works awesome, so accurate, so repeatable, and that's great. So we're going to do a little bit of cleanup here, just vacuuming this up, then we'll flip the fuselage over and do the same thing on the other side. All right, so with our receiver tube and our horizontal stab tube installed, it's a nice snug fit. Now we're going to spend a bit of time checking some things, and this is an important thing to do. So our flattest surface is this right here, which doesn't really matter. It just needs to be repeatable. I'm just going to loosen that off. Let me just adjust the camera here so you guys can see better. Okay, so what we want to do here is we want to confirm that this is at the correct angle. So we're going to do our up and down angle first. So we're just going to take our angle finder here, and the nice thing about this angle finder is it's got a little cutout in the bottom, so it actually misses the phenolic tube that mounts inside the fuselage. So we're just going to put our angle finder up there so we're nice and leveled out. Flip the fuselage over, and let's check our other side. There we go. So we are off with that tube. This is one of those very important steps, because using this is great, but you can't trust the template is going to be bang on perfect. So we know now that the tube, it's not much. You're talking about maybe a couple degrees, but our tube on the left-hand side needs to go towards the top of the fuselage, and on the right-hand side needs to go towards the bottom of the fuselage. So what we do in this case is we're just going to make small adjustments by sanding out our opening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some tape and I'm going to put it on the side that needs sanding, just so we can reference and have a reference point of what we're doing on which side. So I'm going to line this whole area with tape because we're going to be using some CA to fix this. All right, so this is the same side that we looked at previously. And just to show you here, there we go. So what we're going to do is pull our tube out for our horizontal stab, and we're going to push our tube in for that guy. There we go. And now all we do is spend a little bit of time sanding. Now, what happens here is this tube's a nice tight fit. If we happen to start getting a not nice tight fit, we just put a little bit of CA on this side and kick it off with kicker. That just builds this area back up. But we're not doing much. All we're doing is little bits at a time just on this section until we're 100% happy with that angle. Now we don't want to close that angle all the way up. And the reason for that is because the other side is going to have a correction on it as well. So we're going to get about half the way there, and then we need to check both of those sides. Okay, so we're already a lot looser, a lot more loose. So that's fine. So now what happens is we'll put that tube back in. Okay, so now we've got some adjustment on our tube. So I want to push that tube this way while we check our angle. Okay, so it didn't make that much of a difference. We may need to do sanding on the other side to get it to fit properly. So now we'll flip this over, remembering which direction is which. So that one's going to get pushed away. So not really much change at all. We got a little bit of a gap open on the bottom. So we're going to do a little bit more sanding. So what I'm going to do as well is cover this same side with tape, and we'll do some sanding on both sides just to confirm that we're taking that tube and moving it the right direction. All right, so we've done a little bit more sanding on both sides. Let's check and see how this thing is going. So we're giving pressure to the tube to obviously get it seated in place. So we are really darn close. Yeah, bang on there. And then if we do the same thing to the underside, which I won't show you guys, but trust me, oh, bang on. Okay, so that is perfection. Awesome. That's great. So we've got a couple options here as far as what we can do. I think the best thing to do at this point, because this plane is not familiar to me, the best thing to do is for me to just build up these sides with some CA. And the point of doing that is just getting this tube in the right spot. Now, if I had more experience with this aircraft, I may actually glue this piece with aero epoxy in place now and then use some CA to hold it in place, but we're not going to do that. The other thing we could do is we could get this glued in with aero epoxy, and we could have the tube installed and then just put tape holding the tube in the proper location. So I'm going to do a little bit of thinking on this. That may be a really good idea as far as getting this piece mounted. All right, so decided to go with the kind of temporary route for now. Not ready to glue these this tube in for the horizontal stabs yet, so ended up just taping it in the correct location. So this is exactly what we were doing with our pressure. Down pressure on this side, while up pressure, and then down pressure on this side. So that's done. Now the point of getting this installed is when we get our lower wing installed, we're now going to use this as our measuring point. Now our up and down position here really doesn't affect anything as far as this direction goes, and we never really measured that direction, but we can measure that, but we're going to be measuring to our inside corner here, so it really doesn't matter a whole bunch. That measurement's going to go from here to our wingtip. So next thing we're going to do is get our lower wing installed. We'll get our carbon piece laid in there, get this side taped, and we're going to be basically getting our position set here to drill these holes. All right, guys, and we're gonna end the video here. That wraps up video number 1 in the Nurila Glacial, upside down Glacial assembly. And this thing's definitely an interesting challenge. It's going together quite well. We do have our parts order from F3A website down in the US. I've never dealt with them before, so it's the first time I'm ordering from them. We've got a bunch of little parts and stuff coming for this aircraft, our speed control as well too, and that is going to help us progress with the next steps. So when we get to the next video, we'll be opening up that package and taking a look at everything. So thanks so much for tuning into this video series. If you're a fan of the channel, definitely something different for me, making me use my brain, tons of fun. So thanks guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.